Welcome everybody. If you're new here, my name is Jaden Jeffs. I left the FLDS cult, and today we're doing an assessment on if the FLDS will do a Jonestown-style drink the Kool-Aid event. I've been thinking a lot about this for the last couple hours. I watched the Jonestown documentary on YouTube. I watched a couple other documentaries. I've really been analyzing it with AI, ChatGPT, and trying to figure out if the FLDS have a possibility of doing this with all the information I know. And today I'm going to spill all that information out to you guys. I'm going to tell you if the FLDS are going to end up doing something really stupid. When I was in the FLDS still a couple years back, I remember the first time I sat down in this meeting and heard this revelation of my dad saying, it started out with something like, cut not thyself when mob attacks you. And then throughout the revelation, he went on to describe real detailed descriptions of some of his wives attacking each other, or like getting, like, I hate to say it, but like getting cut up by the mob, and then God would restore them to life and put them back down there to see if they would just hurt each other and cut themselves and all this other crazy stuff. And anyway, I sat there listening. You know, most revelations were just simple, not really crazy revelations. And then I sat down in this meeting and I heard this, and it really scared the absolute shit out of me. And for the next couple of weeks, I was just kind of terrified, to be honest. And the truth is, you can't be a true believer in Warren Jeffs and hear a revelation like that and not be a little bit terrified. You can say you're not. You can be like, oh, that was just a test. What's your problem, dude? You know, you can say all those things, but the truth is, if you truly believe what Warren Jeffs says and believe in him as a prophet, that kind of thing is going to terrify you. And I was one of those people. And I think a lot of people that are on the outside looking in, I've talked to a couple of my brothers about this, and I've talked to other people that kind of know what's going on in the FLDS to ask them, hey, what do you think the possibility of this is? And everybody says, no, Heleman's kind of in charge. I think he has a lot of common sense. And so I think that if something like this was to happen in the FLDS, it really would come down to Heleman, or if it's unlikely that Heleman would be pushed aside, but it comes down to the person that's in charge. I think that Warren Jeffs probably isn't aiming to particularly do this, but I just don't know for sure. I can't quite get a read on what Warren Jeffs' point is with all these crazy revelations, or if he really believes them. I don't think that if something like this happens in the FLDS, it's going to look like Jonestown. You have to understand that FLDS men and people and women and children, I think they're way more loyal than the people in Jonestown were. I really do. If Warren Jeffs told an FLDS man to kill someone, say for me, for example, they told him to kill me, and that's just a hypothetical, or some other person, and that man truly believed that Warren Jeffs was serious and wanted him to do it, they would do it. And they would figure out how to do it without getting caught or any of that stuff. The FLDS men are pretty smart about this stuff. They are somewhat able to go up against the FBI and, keep things like that hidden. I don't think long term, but short term, they kind of are. I remember when Warren Jeffs decided that Lyle Jeffs should not be, or he should leave his house arrest and get out of prison and go read these messages to Warren Jeffs' family back in 2016, then, it only took the FLDS man a couple hours to figure out how to get Lyle Jeffs' ankle brace off his ankle, and they put it on the fan, and then, had a fake or had a car drive out with Lyle in it while leaving somebody else there, it only took him a few hours to figure that out. And so I guess all I'm saying is, if the FLDS really truly believe that Warren Jeffs wants them to do something, then they'll figure it out. They will do what he says to do. If he really wanted them to kill somebody, they would do it. But I don't know if a lot of people are going to believe me when I say this, but Warren Jeffs is actually pretty discretionary in those kind of commands. He wouldn't generally tell somebody to go and kill somebody. He just wouldn't. He truly believes, I think, in his heart that that would be wrong and people shouldn't do that. But if he truly believed that that was God's will and that it should happen, then the men would actually do it. Now, why is Heleman the one in charge instead of Warren Jeffs' brother Nephi or Isaac or any of the other men that were there for these long periods of time, helping Warren Jeffs, working right alongside Warren Jeffs? And I have to say it's because everybody that questioned slightly what Warren Jeffs was saying or wanted to do or wondered about something, they've all been pushed away. And the people that are there, they literally all just do what they're supposed to do, or they at least lie to Warren Jeffs that they're doing it. It's one of those two. They either lie to him and say, we're doing what you said to do, or they actually believe it and they're actually going along with it. And they've been doing it for years and years. And even Heleman, I think he's kind of caught up in this mindset of doing what Warren Jeffs says. And I believe he actually truly believes that in 2027 or 28 or, as time goes on here, he truly believes that all these crazy events that Warren Jeffs talks about are going to happen. He genuinely believes that he's kind of at the center of this and helping Warren Jeffs make all this stuff happen. And the reason I believe that is because my brothers and stuff that I talk to about this, they talk to Heleman too. And I hate just laying this all out so openly, but I think that I should lay this part out openly. And it's, Heleman obviously knows that you're going to think he's crazy when he says something to you. If he truly believes something in his heart and he's at the center of it, and he is talking to you who was his brother, who was his friend, and he's telling you everything, or he's discretionarily telling you certain things, then he's trying to put you at ease while also not revealing his full beliefs and intentions. That's just true. And to say, oh, we 100% can just ask him and have him say it, it's yeah, you can ask him and you might even get a genuine answer. But if he believes that he's going to say something that you're going to be like, dude, what the hell? He's not going to say it, even if he 100% believes it. And so I guess my read on it is you can't 100% judge him other than by his actions. That is the only thing you can 100% judge anybody by, is by their actions. And so my question would be, how much has he gone along with these revelations and these crazy things? Because the revelations that Warren Jeffs gives right now are insane. The ones that have gone out, they're nothing. People read these revelations that have gone out in recent times to the general population of the FLDS people that somehow they got their hands on, that Heleman sent out. And they're like, oh, this is so crazy. No, those are nothing compared to what is actually not being sent out, compared to what Heleman and those guys are reading every day. They're reading things about, or they're hearing things from Warren Jeffs about, these exact things of cutting people up and then getting restored, and now they're in the celestial kingdom, and then they're apostles and they're off on other planets, and they're doing things with the 10 tribes, and nuclear weapons are always going off, and they're trying to destroy dad in prison, and this person got on drugs, and then they committed adultery, and then they committed abortion, and then they cut somebody up, and then they cut themselves up when a mob attacked them. Like, these are the kind of things that they're actually hearing. And you don't sit in a room and hear those kind of things for weeks and days and years on end without something going a little bit wrong up here. And that's kind of my read on Heleman and the other boys, is like, yeah, they're with it. They're good people. They're common sense people. But I'm not even sure what I would do if I had been hearing those kind of things for that long of a period of time. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm listening to what they're saying with a grain of salt, with the understanding that they're not going to say something that they know I'm going to think they're crazy for. It doesn't matter. They're not going to say something like that to me. I remember my conversations a couple of years ago with Heleman and the boys about some of these very things, where I was like, what about this? That seems off. And what is their response? You wouldn't understand. Every single time. It's like, oh, you wouldn't understand. It's like, actually, I would understand. If you could explain it, I would understand. You can't explain it. It's always, oh, you wouldn't understand. What does that tell me? It tells me that they're together in a mindset, in a vibration, in a situation where together they've made this somehow make sense in their reality, in their world, which is different, which they know if they tell somebody, it won't make sense. And so that's what they say to people who question what they're doing. And like, for me at that time, there was specific things that I was asking about, or my brothers that were living up in Wyoming were asking them about. There were specific events that we were like, we weren't putting a lot of pressure. We were just simply asking a light question. Like, I remember asking my brother Heleman about those messages. You know, what about these messages that I've been hearing for a little while? I remember I asked him, did Dad say something like that about me after I left? And he just kind of chuckled and said, oh, don't worry about it. And at that time, that tells me, from what he was telling people outside versus what he was telling me, he was sincere. He says, we have to believe. We don't understand everything. But at the same time, you can tell in his mind, he truly wants to believe. And the other thing is, Warren Jeffs has been telling Heleman and the other boys, you're apostles. He's been telling them this for several years now. And that's one of the reasons why, when I was doing that interview with Rachel, maybe you guys didn't catch this, but she said, oh, are you an apostle? What she was wondering is Dad saying I'm an apostle? Because he's kind of crazy. And some people, like Rachel, he says she's in the celestial kingdom, even though she wrote a book about him and all this other stuff. And for years he said she was this terrible person. Well, now he's just like, she's in the celestial kingdom. That's what he told the people up there. And they literally will go and visit that person to see. I remember when I was up in North Dakota, then Heleman had told me he came down to visit some of the boys because Dad had said some good things about him. And I was like, what? Like, these are some of my brothers that have been so gone. They're so gone. They're never coming back. We both knew it. But he just, because of what Dad said, he just decided to go visit them because maybe something's changed. But he went down and nothing had changed. And that's the thing about this whole situation is Heleman, he uses the internet. He knows everything. The problem I have with it is, once you are exposed to reality enough, but you're still going along with a lot of that stuff, still believing in it, still clenched to it, and then that's been happening over a period of years, then I question kind of the mentality and how you may kind of have this messed up in your mind, if that makes sense. So after Warren Jeffs' family hears these messages, time and time again. And, here and there's a message that's just like, be inspired, love giving, and do good to each other and all this stuff. Every message kind of has that vibe, but a lot of them, they're in this context of keep the spirit of God, or when a mob attacks you, you're going to start cutting yourself up, and then you're going to do all these heinous crimes. And Warren Jeffs, in those revelations I was telling you about, he used the word heinous a lot, or just weird words like that kind of make you shiver a little. And I don't think it's exactly meant to make you shiver, but just the whole vibe made me shiver like ever. I thought a mob was going to like burst through the door, start attacking me, and I needed to be so full of the Spirit of God that I wouldn't just turn and start cutting myself up. It was just insane to think back on it. I remember some of those nights that I was in Short Creek. I was kind of in this dark house, and I would sit in my bedroom and just be like, oh my God, this is, I would just have to get out and kneel down and just pray for a long period of time. Now, I also want to mention some of my sisters that have since left the FLDS. I want to talk about their mindset a little bit. And of course, I need to leave their story for them to tell in the future. But this is part of my story too, because I watched their mindset as they came out from under this same thing that everybody up there in North Dakota is under right now, only it's been a few more years now. Basically, Dad would tell them to sit in their living room, and that the angels were going to not eat or drink water. Well, I don't know about drinking water, but to not eat and not go to the bathroom, because he said that manna from heaven was going to be delivered to him. I don't know if it was not go to the bathroom at that time, but the not going to the bathroom thing was because you're in the celestial kingdom, because you've been celestialized, you don't need to go to the bathroom. So these girls literally would sit around their table expecting manna from heaven to be delivered to them, and when it wasn't, they just ordered Domino's pizza. They weren't supposed to make anything in their kitchen, but you would think, at that moment, they're like, this is a bunch of nonsense. No. That is not true. That is not how people's minds works. That's not how this stuff works. You would think in that moment they were like, no. Manna, like all this Warren Jeffs stuff is a bunch of hogwash. Let me tell you why it isn't. The reason it isn't is because you have to justify and make a lot of other little things kind of make sense before you ever get to that position. Before Warren Jeffs can tell you to do that and you'll actually kind of believe it, you've already justified and made a lot of other things not quite make sense, or somehow you made them reasonable in order to even get to that position. So when you're to that position, you just do the same thing. You're like, you make a reason, you make a justification. You might even laugh about it a little bit and be like, what? But you make a justification for it so that you can keep going. That's how the mindset works. It doesn't, like if I took you and did that, you would, even if you truly believed it, when you got done, you would just bust out laughing and be like, I'm going to the bathroom. And you would laugh your head off about those guys, about buying a Domino's pizza. But the reason, you have to realize the reason they ordered Domino's pizza is because they weren't supposed to make anything. And so they didn't. So they ordered a Domino's pizza. Like, you justify everything to the furthest extent that you possibly can. And when you're doing that about extreme things, which in my personal opinion, the people up there in North Dakota have been doing, they've been justifying these extreme views that make absolutely no sense. And then you're just willing to go another step and another step. And then that's when you start asking somebody, why would you do that? Or how does this situation make sense? And they say, you just wouldn't understand. That's another way of, for me, when I hear that, I hear, oh, you've been in this situation justifying all these things that don't make sense, and you've been doing it with a group of people, and so you all understand together that other people wouldn't understand. And so when I ask you about it, your literal only explanation, because you know there's no logical conclusion or explanation to what I just asked, your only explanation is to kind of be isolated. You know that you made it make sense with all those other people that were there. You know that they're going to laugh if you somehow think this is odd. And so you just say, oh, you wouldn't understand. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't. I actually wouldn't, because I wasn't there in your little circle making sense of a bunch of things that don't make sense. This is how brainwashing works. And this is the reason that I've been somewhat concerned about like a Jonestown type thing happening. I don't think a Jonestown type exact event would happen. I think it would be, if something like that happened, it would be much more of the people actually being more willing to do it. When the Jonestown thing happened, he basically forced them to, he kind of forced them to do all this stuff. I truly believe that we'll kind of seen some insane decisions come out of the people from up there that truly are just, you'll look at them and you'll be like, how? That's how. They made a whole bunch of reality from things that aren't true. They made it their own personal reality, and now they're making decisions and judgments and all these things based on those things. You can see how my concern for something like a Jonestown thing happening is genuine if people are in that state of mind. How can it not be? I was thinking family often has to be isolated. People have to be separated. They have to be willing to kind of go with the group more than with their family, or thinking something outside of their family is more important. And every single FLDS member is that way, right? This is one of the questions you have to evaluate is, are people more loyal to the group or more loyal to their lives and their family? And it's so, like, every family in the FLDS has likely had either their father or their mother or both sent away for long periods of time, 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and maybe they're back together now, but they went away, they came apart, they moved here, they moved there, they've been moved all over the place. They will move and do whatever Warren Jeffs says, the more loyal ones. Now, the ones that aren't super loyal, we don't need to be concerned about those people. Actually, you'll see people leave that are closer to the inner circle. You'll see those people often all of a sudden make a big jump and leave because they awakened. They came to their senses. They came to reality. They say, none of this is making sense. So you'll see those inner people actually oftentimes, even like me and Warren Jeffs' other children that have left, these inner people often are the ones that make the jump because they recognize the insanity of it, whereas the outer people, they often don't see that insanity. And so now that Warren Jeffs sent so many people away that were in his inner circle, you're starting to see other people of the FLDS get pulled in. And a lot of these people that I told you guys moved up to North Dakota, a lot of them are like 30 or younger. And so you'll see some of them all of a sudden deflect because they'll say, this is just getting so insane. But that only makes the inner group even pull together tighter, be stronger. They're doing this thing together. So I guess my point here is with the family, with the importance of the group rather than the individual, it's like 5 out of 5, right? It's 10 out of 10. Like, everybody there is way more loyal to the group than they are to themselves or to their family or just common sense. Like, they'll go with the group over going with their own common sense. And that doesn't mean that they're going to do a Jonestown event exactly, but it's a good indicator in that direction. It's not good that you have everybody that thought independently now pushed out of the FLDS. That's half the FLDS. The inner circle that all used to be surrounding Warren Jeffs has literally been punished and pushed away. All the people that had some common sense, that wouldn't lie to themselves about some of these things, they're all gone. Now, I still think Heleman probably is one of the better people you could have there, because I think if Warren Jeffs said, oh, this crazy thing is going to happen on this certain date, you should actually hurt yourself, I think he's one to be like, no, I'm not going to tell people to do that. I'm not going to anything. We're kind of going to let things happen. There is a lot of the younger people that at one point they got pushed out to such an extent that they just started using the internet. And I think most of those people, when things get too crazy, as long as they're not in that situation where they're denying reality in a bunch of different ways, they're going to have more common sense. They're going to step away if things get too insane. One thing I'll say is, when a person sacrifices, and say, for example, Warren Jeffs told you, don't eat for 1 week. Now, you might be like, oh, that's going to be really hard. But let's say you pushed through. You did it. And then he told you, like, eat again. You would feel relieved. You would be like, I did it. That strengthens one's commitment. And then let's say he sent you away for a year to live by yourself and earn your own way and just repent and be faithful. And you went, and at first you were trying really hard, but then you kind of got slacky, but then you kept trying hard and you repented, and then you got the call back. And then you come back and you're like, yes, I am a part of this. And the more that kind of happens, the further you feel a part of this, the more you feel committed to it. And so when that directive comes to do something even more extreme, it could break a person to where they've been like, oh, all that time, that was a bunch of nonsense, and now it's this, I'm leaving. That could break somebody, or it could just make him even more loyal. And I think if you give people enough hard ones right in a row, then it will break them. But I think if you stretch them out and give them the reward between, it actually makes them more and more and more committed. And every single person that's there basically has done this. A lot of them went out for 5 years and then they got that call. And it was the best day of their life. Not even close. The best day of their life. They've been working for it. That's how Russell Johnson was. The guy that was doing the meetings down there for Dad, that a bunch of people thought he was just off doing his own thing, but that is just not him. He was doing exactly what Warren Jeffs told him to do. He went away, and when he went, he felt so bad. He felt so sick that he basically fasted to the point where he would faint. And he was literally almost to die. That he felt so bad about being sent away. And then he got this job for like $12 an hour, and he just literally drove to work, did the job, drove home, didn't do anything else for 4 years or 5 years, something like that. And one day he gets that call, he's supposed to go do the meetings, and that was like the most rewarding day of his life. And he did meetings for a long period of time, and to him that was just a testament that Warren Jeffs and God or whoever, they could see his commitment, they could see his devotion. It makes one even more devoted if they pass through serious trial for a cause. It makes it even harder for them to turn away. All the people up there in North Dakota that have made things make sense, that makes them even more devoted. That makes them more loyal to the cause. The fact that they never turned away, even when it wasn't making any sense. The fact that they kept going, the fact that they put faith in God, and then all these things have kept working out, and the Lord opened the funds, and the Lord did this and that. That's all strengthened their delusion and made them feel even more committed to the cause that is a bunch of bullshit. It makes them more committed to make the next thing that doesn't make sense make fucking sense. Another thing I think a lot of people don't know is Warren Jeffs has often said, or even when I was there, he said only a few million people are left on the earth, or in the United States. I think he said 5 million people were left in the United States. I remember, I was also part of that delusion when he would say that. I remember traveling over to Denver, and I knew the population of the Denver metro area was something like 3 million people. And he had said something like there was only 5 million people left. And every car that I saw off to the side of the road, I was like, yeah, because Warren Jeffs would say those people have been lifted away. They've been taken by the judgments of God over to Neptune or some other planet. And every car, I started noticing tons of cars just parked off to the side of the road. It's like I saw gazillions of cars just parked off to the side of the road. And they were real cars. They were probably there before too. I mean, just as many. But that's what I would think about them. Oh, that person. And then we were in rush hour and I was like, what? There's no way. I was like, I wonder if all the people are around here or what's going on. And then Dad would say the angels were driving cars around and running the infrastructure of the country and all this batshit crazy stuff. And that's the thing you have to realize. All those people up there, whether they believed it or not, they made it make sense enough to where they're still there. And all the people that Warren Jeffs said were dead, that cut each other up, they made that make sense enough to where they're still there. Warren Jeffs still sends them directives. Do this. This person should move to this house. They still do it. Yeah, Heleman might not send out every revelation because he knows in the back of his mind, this is going to get us in trouble. But is he reading some crazy revelations to people? I guarantee you he is. Or they are. Or however they have it working up there. See, I'm not in on every little detail. It's not like I have some spy up there giving me intel. But if I did, I'm going to tell you what I would look out for over the next little while. But I'm just saying I understand the mindset. I've been through it. I made those things make sense to the point where I didn't want to leave. I said, I've gone through this and this and this, and I've been tested in this way and this way. Am I really going to give it all up now? And there came a day that I was like, I'm going to. And I'm hoping for them, these extreme events push them to that day where they say, you know what? I am going to give it up now. I've made all these things make sense, and now I'm going to give it up. I'm going to admit that I was wrong. And that's so hard to do. I remember the girls that I was telling you guys about earlier, and hope to have one on the podcast. But that were eating the pizza. Those girls left. After they left, it's not like they were just able to kind of make it make sense. They left, and then they called the people back there and said, hey, what is Warren Jeffs saying about us? Is he still saying we're good? Can you please tell him we're trying? We can't really be there anymore because, we were just under so much pressure, and Warren Jeffs kept saying that we were doing good things even though we were wearing jeans and doing all the things that he said we shouldn't. But will you please tell us if he's saying anything bad about us? And they would report back and say, oh, Warren Jeffs is still saying you're good. You're in the celestial kingdom. And he was. Even though they had left, they still wanted to please Warren Jeffs. They still wanted to know, and they were so worried about if he had said something bad about them or anything like that, even after they had decided to leave. I truly have never seen such an insane example. And that's one of the things that made me leave too. Watching those guys, I was like, oh my God. that's one of the big things that made me leave. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe their mindset at that time about everything. Like, after they had left, if Warren Jeffs said somebody in the FLDS or even out of it was bad, they literally wouldn't talk to him and believe that they were bad. It was truly the most insane mindset that I have ever seen. It was, of all my experiences that were insane, just watching that up so close was insane. And you got to realize Heleman was so involved in that. And he also was trying to figure out on it what was going on. And he somehow made all that stuff make sense. Where Warren Jeffs was saying they were still good. And he was being like, okay, and now that they went down to live with some other people, and, a lot of the girls did. And they would go down and visit them and say, hey, I think you're doing the best you can, because, Warren Jeffs still saying good things about you. I'm saying they're a little bit messed up in how they think about things. They don't see it for what it is, because they've been lying to themselves for so many years about all these little things, and then you do it bigger and bigger. That's what I was telling you. Okay, so if something really bad is going to happen, and I think right now the mindset and everything is kind of bad, and a lot of people are going through a lot of weird things. But if something really bad is going to happen, these are the signs we have to watch out for, okay? Orders for multi-day fasting. That's going to be one of Dad's biggest tools, because he's in prison. He can't be out here telling people and forcing all these situations, right? He can try, he can do his best, but the multi-day fasting, I know from personal experience that can actually almost trigger a psychedelic experience all by itself. It's crazy how familiar I already was with psychedelic experiences, even though I had never done them. But multi-day fasting, yeah, something like that, particularly under pressure, because someone can do a multi-day fast, even I can, no problem. The thing that makes it different is you believe the judgments of God are about to come. You believe you're about to be destroyed. You believe it so deeply in your soul, and you're praying constantly. It does something in your mind, and you actually have an experience. So I would say that's one of Warren Jeffs' most powerful tools. And that's, if something bad does happen, I think that will be the beginning of it. I think that will be a part of it. Maybe it'll happen multiple times. But that would be something that would start it out. Now, they already don't have a bunch of devices, or they're pretty limited on their internet access. But a lot of FLDS kids, I think more than you would expect, have phones. They're just expected to not get on the internet. And a lot of them actually, they have a phone system where they can block the internet, but they still have the phone app and the other apps, but you can't actually get on the internet. And then you could actually, if you connect it to Wi-Fi, but they have a way of deleting and keeping blocked the Safari app and the App Store and those apps. So even if you are able to connect to Wi-Fi, you really can't browse the internet. But I guess if the FLDS kids if they really start cracking down on their phones while also doing the fasting thing, I think that would be a pretty big red flag. Now, how would we know about this? Probably the only way would be if the FBI, and I know they are, if the FBI monitoring the phone calls and the letters and the communication between Warren Jeffs and Heleman and the family, Warren Jeffs' family up there. And I know the FBI is monitoring those conversations, but that would be a huge red flag. If I saw that, and now let's add in one more thing. A bunch of people are supposed to kind of come together. Say they've been living in North Dakota, for example, but they're supposed to kind of move together. Now, if they were fasting And they're kind of like really cracking down on the devices. And then they're supposed to move together. Even if Heleman, for example, just was doing what Warren Jeffs said to do, because Warren Jeffs said, like, okay, I'm about to get delivered right now. God's shown me this. They would believe it. Of course they would. And so they were gathering all together. Even if Heleman or the boys or whoever's in charge didn't really understand why all this was happening, to me that would be like a big red flag. Like, they're fasting. They're like yearning for Warren Jeffs' deliverance on this particular time, because like everything's kind of intensifying, and then they're getting strict with the devices. Like, everybody kind of turn your devices in. We need to not have distractions. We need to be focused. And then added in with that at the same time, okay, people are supposed to like start gathering together. We're supposed to kind of gather in this central event, and you've been called, and let's come here and let's fast and pray. And it's exciting because everybody's kind of supposed to come together. This is an important event. Okay, if something like that was happening, if I was monitoring the communication between Warren Jeffs and his family, I'd be like, this is a big red flag. And I know the FBI probably has, from my understanding, they have actually a couple people kind of monitoring this situation. But, you know, if I was on the ground in North Dakota and I saw a lot of this activity, and I coupled that with the communication from Warren Jeffs, then I would be like, you know, we really need to keep a good eye on all these people and what they're doing. Now, Warren Jeffs already he's already told his sons, like, you're translated, you're prophets, you're apostle. I came and laid my hands on your head, and you're an apostle, and you've gone to this world and that world, and you're supposed to be like these special people in the world. Now, in my opinion, the boys up there, they truly believe some of these things. And that's what I was saying about, you've been lying to yourself about reality for a long time. Plus, you've been being told you're an apostle, you're this special person. You do all these special things. You meet your father in visions, all these things. And then you're hearing these revelations about people cutting themselves up and killing each other and all this stuff. This stuff, you don't hear that for years and sit in a room like you believe it and actually don't. That's what I think about people that kind of shrug their shoulders and be like, oh, they've got some common sense. It's like, yeah, and so do I. And what would I do in that situation? I'm not so sure. No, they don't get it. You don't. Yeah, when you talk to them, they almost seem totally normal. They do. And they're not going to tell you things that they know that you're not going to think are normal. It's going to be one of those you don't understand things. But they're hoping that you just don't even know enough to ask one of those you don't understand questions. So I'm just saying, if the idea is a lot of like translation, which Warren Jeffs has been talking about repeatedly, and I know a lot of these fast things that have happened, they've been around this situation, like you're going to get translated, or you're celestialized so you don't need to eat anymore, or you're going to get manna from heaven that's going to celestialize you, so do this fast thing or whatever. Okay, I'm just saying, let's add all this stuff up to kind of see it coming together, say in 2026 or 2027 or 2028, see all this stuff kind of coming together. We got some major red flags. At least a few people are going to go batshit crazy from all this stuff. And when you're in that kind of mental state, who knows what's going to happen? Them logging on and watching this YouTube video, it's not going to change their mind. They're going to watch this YouTube video and they're going to be like, he just doesn't understand. He just does. Yeah. And they also just don't understand what they've been doing to their minds. They truly don't. They have no clue. But in their little world, they have made all together, they've made everything make sense. And that just reinforces it to a degree that's insane. Again, watching those girls leave 3 years ago now, or 2021, I think. watching how insane their mindset was. And thankfully they've come a long ways. They're all doing a lot better. Watching that and realizing that we're 4 years later and those guys have been being told they're prophets and apostles for 4 years. And for me, just a backseat on the communication between my brothers and other people and just hearing how they talk to them and how normal the people view them, it's a huge red flag to me. I'm like, no. Yeah, do you know what? They don't talk to me. They know they can't talk to me without me like kind of seeing through it. And that's what's crazy is in the back of their minds, they know other people aren't going to make sense of it, but they've made sense of it. So it's one of those you don't understand type of things. So yeah, I would just say, like if I was in North Dakota and I saw kind of this, it would be hard to see because they're already, like even if you were monitoring all their movements, you wouldn't really know what was happening. But if you were monitoring their movements simultaneously with totally monitoring the communication from the prison, which is sometimes hard to do when you're hearing all this crazy stuff all the time and you're reading it. Like if you're an FBI agent, dude, that would make an FBI agent crazy. It really would. Reading those messages, it would make an FBI agent crazy. It would make him be like, oh, I can't. I promise you. That's how insane those messages are. And those guys were listening to him. Like those girls, they were listening to him sometimes for like 8 hours. Just listening to him on repeat. And thankfully, like those girls just, they got to the end of their rope and decided to leave, even though they did it in the craziest possible way. But there's the grown-ups, I'll tell you, the grown-ups that are in that situation, they're much more devoted, and they don't just wind up and drive off like the girls did. They don't kind of run to the end of their ropes. They get more and more into it, especially the ones that have been there their whole lives. I'm telling you, some of those guys, they get so deep into it that it's just insane. And their mindsets can get truly mind-boggling, fucked up as fuck. Yeah, people don't understand how those kind of messages coupled with delusion over a long period of time fuck the fuck out of your brain. Sorry about the swear words, guys, but it's true. It's nuts. And I guess me swearing is just like further proof to any FLDS person watching this that I've lost the Spirit of God and I'm losing it and they're right and the judgments of God are probably coming and who knows, the 10 tribes are probably almost to come. And, you know, here pretty soon in 2027, I'm probably just going to get like deleted in mega earthquake or something down here in Salt Lake. Or something, you know. That's what they think. And that's one thing about the crazy about the future. I was reading this comment from this FLDS person on my YouTube channel the other day, and they're like, oh, the U.S. is getting pretty crazy, and the world events are getting pretty spicy, and I don't know if the U.S. is going to like hold together till 2027. And I was like, yeah, I remember when we said that in 2008. I remember when we said that in 2012. I remember when we said it in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We were always saying that. It's like you look at the politics and you're like, oh, this is just going batshit crazy. I guarantee, like, and maybe it is, and maybe it will go off the rails. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm not at all convinced the FLDS are like not going to go off the rails either, based on their past record over the last 20 years. You know, 2012 and up to 2016 in the FLDS was crazy, but it wasn't as crazy as it is now. Like, those kind of messages weren't being read. Yeah, they were starting out, but, you know, these messages about your own mother or whoever getting, you know, dissected or something crazy like that. And it's so insane how I just truly believed it. I look back on those events and I think I was truly believing everything I mean, I remember Dad said that one of my brothers, and I remember, like, he named him, he said what he did, he said how he died, and then he said another one that committed adultery and a bunch of other stuff with one of Dad's wives. You know, Dad was just going batshit crazy saying all these things. But when he said that, then I was actually living with some of my brothers, and I needed to go get some stuff from their house. And I truly believed that this person was dead. Oh, it actually wasn't a brother that was dead. It was an uncle. And actually, and another person was Dad's brother Leroy. He said was dead, or no, he just said he had done these evil things. Anyway, they were living in the house together, and I went to get some of my stuff that I had left there, and I was terrified. So I went at a time that they wouldn't be there, and I walked in the house, and I knew exactly where my stuff was. I walked over, I picked it up, and I looked over and I saw Dad's brother Leroy, and I was terrified as God. I thought a demon and lions and drugs and all these things were just going to attack me. You know, I just looking at Dad's brother Leroy after I had heard what Dad said about him terrified the absolute hell out of me. And I, you know, he was trying to wave at me and say hi, and I just grabbed my stuff and beelined out of that house, got in my truck, and just peeled off as fast as possible, and would never even talk to him, you know, for like a long period of time. And I look back at those events and I was like, oh my God, I so believed, I so 100% believe that is insane. Oh, and then I saw the guy that my dad said was dead, and I was like, what? And that was one of those moments I was kind of like, happened to make things make sense. I was like, oh, what on earth is happening? So yeah, I don't believe those guys are, totally normal. Yeah, when you talk to them, they seem totally like okay in their minds. So what is my assessment in the end on if a Jonestown thing will happen in the FLDS? I would say something really like Jonestown. I would say like 30% chance of actual mayhem like Jonestown. I would say a 90% chance that there's I don't want to say a number, but a good chunk of people that can't deal with the truth in the aftermath, and end up like in mental institutions for quite a period of time, or worse, you know, the step worse than that. I think there's a 90% chance that happens with quite a few of them. And then I think that there will be isolated events of people fasting to the point of you know, maybe something bad happening, or even I think Warren Jeffs actually might do something like that, like a Jonestown thing where everybody gathers together, and I do think that'll happen actually. I think that moment will come that I was describing where everybody's kind of gathering together. Warren Jeffs talked a lot about 2027 and 2028, and I think what he was saying, this is back in 2017, he was saying in 10 years' time, all the wicked will be destroyed from North America, and there'll still be some people on the other continents, and 10 years from then is 2027. But even in the recent years, my understanding is that he's been saying a lot of things about 2027. He says like 2028, or I think he doesn't say, he continues to say we don't know the exact time of the coming of Jesus Christ, but all the wicked will be swept from the earth by 2027, 2028 will kind of be a year of of like the 10 tribes coming and the preparation. From my understanding, he says there'll be a time of preparation where the 10 tribes come back, swinging in on this massive planet that's supposedly like 10 times bigger than this earth, and the earth opens up and like they come together like a scroll, and there's this big flash flood, and the ocean piles up over California, and everybody dies, and then the 10 tribes like throw up this bridge, and they come across and come down, and they build up this temple in the New Jerusalem or whatever. But Warren Jeffs also lately has been saying that, this temple has been coming down, and they've been getting their ordinances in it, and that's how my brothers are apostles, and all this other batshit crazy stuff that they somehow make sense, and they don't question enough to the point where they leave. Because I know if those boys were questioning things more than they are, I know they would be talking more, maybe to me. I assume they would come by, and talk to me, maybe. But for sure they would have more communication than they do with my other brothers that are out. I know they would. If they weren't questioning things more, if they were questioning things more, they would have more communication with us, with the girls, with the family. But in these times of isolation and where there's not a ton of communication, you might hear something once in a while. They say something once in a while. They're in it. They believe it. It's not a time of relaxation. It's not a time of, everything's kind of okay. They're not getting a lot of messages from Warren Jeffs. They're not hearing much. Those kind of times, they come around more. You start hearing more from people. They start asking more questions. When it's more isolated, when they're hearing things from Warren Jeffs, when the things are changing up a little bit, they become more isolated. You start hearing less. You don't get that text on your birthday that says, hey, happy birthday. You don't get that text that just says, hey, I'm getting kind of bored. I'm starting to wonder about a few things. You don't get any of those. And it seems like that's kind of how it's been. And so with the year 2027, I think that would be the likely time. And I don't know why I believe this kind of, but with Warren Jeffs, it seems like his life has been a self-fulfilling prophecy of his thoughts. So he prophesied all this bad stuff was going to happen to the FLDS people. He prophesied that Short Creek would be taken away, the lands in Colorado City. He prophesied mobs would drive them away. He prophesied all the FLDS lands would be taken away from the FLDS people. He prophesied all these things, and guess what? They happened. But they didn't happen how he said they would happen. Mobs didn't drive the people out of Short Creek. No, just lawsuits were filed, and they kind of got taken away, and then lawsuits were filed against the other lands, and they got taken away just like Warren Jeffs said they would. Everything in his mind has been a self-fulfilling prophecy. And to me, when he says 2027 is kind of the end, and the coming of, all the wicked will be swept off the earth, and the coming of Christ, to me, it kind of signifies his own death. If he feels like that's the end, I do believe, and that's the time he's going to get out of prison and all this other stuff. He thinks he's been lifted out of prison all the time. I think it's truly amazing to me how everything that Warren Jeffs prophesied and thought of in his mind has come true as far as it could in the face of reality. Like, in the face of reality, yeah, God didn't come down or mobs didn't drive the people out of Short Creek, and God didn't come down and do a bunch of stuff. But in the context of what's happened with the FLDS people, Warren Jeffs said, many people will leave, many people will apostatize and turn against me. And all this stuff has happened almost perfectly to the FLDS people, but only to them. It's a perfect pattern of Warren Jeffs' thoughts, and that's why I'm concerned about 2027 and even 2026, because in the lead up to this, there's going to be major pressure by Warren Jeffs to prepare, to hasten, to hurry. There's going to be major pressure, it seems to me, like during these times, and that could be a time when some of this stuff kind of goes off the rails, and this kind of an event could happen. And so yeah, like after all my talking with ChatGPT and watching the Jonestown show, I watched it a few minutes ago on YouTube. After like watching all that stuff, I only give like a 30% chance of a major event, mostly because Warren Jeffs is in prison. But I still don't discount it. And I could take that up if I hear more, or if I learn more about certain things happening in the FLDS community. But most people outside, even that are close to the FLDS people, they don't understand completely the mindset and the potential danger for this, because when you're talking to those people, it does seem like they're with it. It does seem like they're normal. And they say those exact things like, oh, you wouldn't understand. Yeah, you fucking wouldn't understand. Now, in the shorter term and in all this time, I would just say some of the greater risks to the FLDS people, to the younger people, to the women and stuff, would be like lack of medical assistance and severe fasting and people not having their needs met in the short term. A lot of this stuff is probably just 100, I would give that like 100% guarantee of happening. And these aren't going to be things that like get reported to the police or anything like that. Maybe a severe case where someone that ends up, they already have a medical issue and then they end up somehow passing away. But that would just be, it's easy for like a medical examiner to say, oh, they passed away and they didn't quite get what they needed. It's pretty easy for those kind of events to kind of pass over without realizing the true cause of them. And so I think there'll be smaller things like that, and there'll be deaths. And I will say in the FLDS, it is crazy how when someone dies, it's almost always 3 people that die, without fail. And that's a testament to the FLDS. They believe that God will call 3 witnesses, like 3 people die and they go and they testify to God about the things on the earth. But I don't know if it's like because of the belief in the FLDS that it's that way. I don't know what it is, but it is insane how when the death happens, almost invariably within a month, like 2 more happen. It's like, I remember that being that way almost every time. And then you go a few months and then it's like, oh, 3 more people just somehow die. And a lot of times they'll be like young people. But yeah, I almost wonder if it's because the FLDS have that belief so much that it just happens. I don't know. But in the short term, I do think some of these crazier things will happen. Guaranteed. Like, people will suffer. People mentally will just be, some people will come out of that truly just mentally not okay. And maybe, they can recover from it, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some love. It's going to take some serious conflict with reality that's almost impossible to explain to people unless they've been through it, because they don't realize how delusional one can get when they're in a group of people like that continues to collectively make things make sense that don't make sense. Collectively deny reality is one of the most powerful things that get people mentally insane. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I would say if you're in North Dakota, you can somewhat keep an eye on this stuff, but it really comes down, like, the only people that can truly keep an eye on it are the FBI. And that would, if they have even one person on the ground in North Dakota and one person truly that understands everything I just said, if they have one person monitoring all Warren Jeffs communications and one person on the ground, that would be all they needed to have a serious heads up about an event like this. Like I said, guaranteed smaller things will happen. People will get hurt. People will suffer mentally, physically. in like minor situations. I think right now everybody's being taken care of. People are getting the food they need to eat up there. And, you know, as far as I'm aware, FLDS children are, you know, getting the food they need and whatnot. It's more about, but all that doesn't change that all this insane revelations and all that is continuing to happen. And like I said, you don't lie to me and try to tell me everybody up there is totally normal when they've been hearing these kind of revelations for that long. That is the biggest fucking lie I've ever heard. Don't even try to think about telling me something like that. And it doesn't matter if those guys watch this video. It truly doesn't. It doesn't matter if they watch any of my videos or yours or anybody else's, unless they watch them for all day for long enough and actually come to the realization of some of these things. Then oh yes, watching these videos might help to some degree, but just because they watch one of these videos, it can actually do more damage if they just make this also, they justify this video like, oh, he doesn't understand, we understand. You know, it can actually make things worse, because then no matter who says anything, they will make it somehow make sense. So actually sometimes when those guys, that's part of my concern, is they've had the internet, they watch a lot of things, they know all these things. It's part of my concern is that, yeah, they've seen all this stuff for long enough that they should be maybe sending a text or just communicating barely more, and not even to me, just maybe to some other people. And I don't think it's happening, and that's part of my concern. Everybody that talks to them is like, yeah, I think they're doing all right. I think things are pretty normal. And I'm like, that's actually kind of a red flag. The fact that we're not seeing like a few more concerns coming out of it is kind of a red flag to me. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. We'll hope the best, prepare for the worst. You guys stay out of trouble. You know you should like and subscribe. I have a Substack. If you want to support me, it's $5 a month or $50 a year for shit like this. Why don't you want to hear me swear more? Come on. Subscribe to my Substack. Give this video a huge thumbs up. Until next week, peace out.